I've played Warframe for a very long time, and over those years I've racked up over 650 hours, probably the most I've ever spent in any game. And within this time I've never really found a game that could realistically compete with it for my attention. But I've recently become acutely aware of a competitor, that being the First Descendant. A lot of people describe this game as like if Warframe and Destiny fucked in a back alley dumpster and then birthed this game in the same back alley 9 months later. Okay, people don't say that, but it is impressive how much these games' DNA the First Descendant shares. It's certainly a little less Space Ninja than Warframe, and a little less gun-toting Space Wizard than Destiny, but I think almost anyone who's played both can see their influence here. Enough about them, though. I'm gonna dig my teeth into this game and see if it's any good. Okay, let's launch this, and I am immediately confused as to what in the actual fuck these brightness and contrast sliders do. It honestly just seems like they cancel each other out, and you can fucking see my confusion through this recording. I just ended up settling with 7 on both, which looks no fucking different from 5, but whatever. And after I figured that out, I'm greeted by this cool as fuck title screen. Oh, wait, this is a live service game. Click off the video game equivalent of a pop-up ad, set the settings to max, and start. You're immediately thrown into a cutscene, and I gotta admit, it was actually pretty fucking cool, even though I don't think I listened to a single bit of the lore. Afterwards, Soldier 76 here greets you and gives you your first mission: protect this absolute child. Not gonna lie though, her personality is way better than the other characters. You then get the choice between 3 characters. First, a cold thotty. Second, the guy from Final Fantasy. And third, a level 400 Elden Ring character. These characters are all unique, all carefully crafted, and have their own ability sets for whatever playstyle you'd like. So naturally, I picked the one with the biggest tits. Seriously though, if the devs released the data for the starters, I bet this girl was picked over 90% of the time. You're searching for something called the Iron Heart, which you're told is important, but not fucking why. And by the way, just as an aside, VS has a really weird accent. It's in that like uncanny valley shit of cadence and tone that just feels like it was done by AI.
I'll freeze anything coming after us. You should go first, Bunny.
Hey guys, it's your boy, Mr. fucking President Joey Biden here. Let's smoke this dank-ass fucking weed.
You're now given control of your character, and holy fuck, that HUD is huge. And you aren't told what half of this shit does either, although in fairness, most of this is tutorialized later. But seriously, there couldn't be any better design for this. I mean, what the fuck are these things at the top right? By the way, as I'm editing and voiceovering this, I still don't fucking know what these things are. And do you really need a visual aid for getting into the fucking menu? This doesn't seem like the type of game with a player base that needs to know that escape, the most universal menu key, is in fact the menu key. I just feel like you can make all of these UI elements smaller, and I also think better placement, like it is in Warframe, would really help the readability of this game, since even after getting accustomed to the HUD, I still had to actively look for how many bullets or how much shield I had. In all fairness, this isn't as bad as Ubisoft's newest HUDs, but I still think this has been done better elsewhere. Shortly after Bunny pulls a bunny, you encounter your first enemies, and honestly, I've got to admit the gunplay in here ain't half bad. Excusing my absolute dog shit aim, I think the guns in here feel pretty good. And after testing if there was friendly fire or not, I arrived at this fucking place where the Iron Heart, this apparently extremely rare and impossible to find thing, is just laying about. Bunny starts doing some science shit with the Death Star, but because you just can't leave things be, you gotta fucking touch it and get yourself sent to the Shadow Realm, which honestly looks a lot like the board levels in Control. And can I just say, this bitch has a happy-ass expression for someone who just got teleported into fucking modern architecture land. You learn how to do the goofiest fucking looking jump of all time here, and get taught how to use the grappling hook, which the tooltip for only appeared after I figured out how to fucking use it. Thanks, game. I do actually really like this, though. It feels a little like the grappling hook in the Batman Arkham series, where it pretty intelligently locks onto things you look at, and it's super satisfying to use. I did wish it had a little more range, but I understand why that'd be pretty much impossible to change now. After walking through the entrance to the Erd Tree, you meet Mommy. The guide, one of the ancestors, I think. I don't know, I was too busy looking at her tits. The Vulgus then attack, and you narrowly escape, and now you get access to your abilities, which, honestly, kind of fucking sick. I don't know about the other characters, but I actually really liked VS's abilities. You run up the longest staircase known to man and discover that the leader of the Vulgus has beaten up your Discord kitten, and that's just something you can't stand for, so you start blasting, but he blasts you harder, I guess. This guy's a little cliche for a villain, but he is pretty badass, so I'll try and forgive his mwahahaha energy. Anyways, he touches the Iron Heart and becomes an Earthbender, sending you off to face this thing, a Gravewalker. The Gravewalker is about as tutorial boss as a tutorial boss can get, so I'm just gonna skip over it. You then get teleported to Albion, I don't fucking know how to pronounce it, and are immediately bombarded with players that the microtransactions won over. I mean, I read some reviews about this game beforehand, but I never thought it would be this monetized. Obviously, you can just not purchase this shit, but I think it's worth criticizing this game's intense hard-on for getting you to spend your money. You talk with Mommy, who tells you to go find some ancient shit. And so then you talk with Soldier 76, who also tells you to go find some ancient shit. Great writing, I know. I gotta mention, the dialogue in this game is interesting. Again, it's kind of in that uncanny valley where it feels a little like Fallout dialogue, but also feels like you're talking to an Oblivion NPC. Certain characters' lips just don't match up with what they're saying, even though I think they're supposed to.
You talking about the guide? To be honest, I suspect that the guide is either a new Vulgus weapon or a new enemy.
Last night and night before, there was 3 women walking down the street that way. I saw them. I said, hey, you 3 women, why are y'all walking down the street that way?
Bunny then gets forced to pay for a new suit and doesn't get any workers' comp. The fucking workers' union clearly didn't survive in this universe. You then go to Kingston, where you meet, oh my god, it's Irish Mommy.
At present, only you, Descendant, can see or hear me.
Please marry me. You then meet Marcus, who's probably wondering who the fuck you're talking to, and he gives you your next mission. The Vulgus are assaulting, someone. I don't remember, so he assigns you to help. Of course, he just sits on his ass while you do all the hard work. You're quickly reacquainted with the Vulgus, who are about as weak as they were during the tutorial, so consistency, I guess. I got really angry at this wall I couldn't shoot through, and goddamn does this game love putting explosives on the battlefield. Seriously, these things are fucking everywhere, it's almost comical, but I have to admit it does give the game a little bit of dynamism, which I think it desperately needs. I don't think the combat here is awful, but I certainly don't think it's very good. I think I'd have the same complaints with it that I do with Destiny. It just doesn't really have that much weight to it. I will commend this game for its relative enemy variety, though. I was really surprised that the game wasn't just 2 copied and pasted thralls and a few boss enemies. You have variations for difficulty and region here, which is refreshing. This game is very fucking easy, though. I think throughout my admittedly limited playthrough, I only failed a mission once, and that was because I was just fucking around. I get that this is an early section of the game, but even in later bits, I don't think the difficulty ramped up enough. I really didn't have to do a lot other than loot and change my equipment every once in a while to do just fine in any mission. Also, the tutorials in this game were hilariously fucking short, and I think for newer players that haven't played Warframe or dealt with games with modding systems like this will be very fucking confused as to how it works. Honestly, the game's so easy that modding might not even matter all that much, so maybe not as big of a deal as I thought. It may be that I'm just misremembering, but I even think that Warframe's tutorials did more for explaining than this game's did, and for those who haven't played Warframe, the tutorials are not good. They're all just thrown in the player's face with very little regard for their experience. Now, I get that making tutorials for systems is a little difficult, and no matter what, you're going to lose some people, but I think that there could be a much better way of doing it. Maybe have a character dedicated to tutorials, not this robot fuck, an actual human that explains it thoroughly. This is the point where I'm going to stop with the First Descendant footage and start comparing it to Warframe, since I've gotten a lot of my initial complaints out of the way. I think the most glaring difference when it comes to the overall experience of Warframe is the movement system, which is honestly the best one I've ever seen in a game. I'm sure there are plenty of other videos out there that explain it in detail, but my very simple opinion of it is that it's A, fast, and B, easy to understand. The movement in Warframe really makes you feel like a badass, zipping around the map like a coked out monkey. The First Descendant, in comparison, is a much more boots-on-the-ground type of system, which isn't necessarily bad, with a grappling hook that is cool, but I think is far too slow to justify it being there. Players should want to use these tools, and when you delegate such a cool concept with good mechanics to basic parkour puzzles, it makes it feel really fucking useless. I think it should either give you much more momentum, or have better range to make the movement not feel like you're walking around on concrete shoes. Although I do like how they implemented Bunny's movement. I think it's a very good amount of speed for what it's worth. The gunplay's quite a bit weaker too, I feel. And for a game that takes so much inspiration from Warframe, why in the fuck did they decide to take Destiny as the main inspiration for gunplay? I've never been satisfied with Destiny's combat. The guns here are at the very least unique, but I honestly don't remember feeling like any of them were all that really fun to use. Warframe, on the other hand, has some of the most unique, most enjoyable weapons around in the gaming space, and not just guns either. Warframe's use of melee weapons is great, whereas the First Descendant delegates it to a punch button like Destiny. Hell, you even have incarnate weapons, which evolve as you play with them, unlocking new stats and new modes of fire. I don't think the modding system is up to snuff with Warframe either. I've played around with mods in this game quite a bit, and honestly, I just don't like them. It kind of feels like Cyberpunk's old skill tree, just percentage boosts that really don't mean much. Now, that's not to say that Warframe's system isn't just percentage boosts. It definitely is in a lot of cases, but it just seems a little more complex than this. There's really only damage, crit chance, and then fire rate or reload boosts and mag capacity boosts. Warframes has tons of others, augments, Exilus mods, and also just a ton more unique mods with different effects, like mods with stronger positive effects but also negatives, which is also present in some capacity within the First Descendant, but I still think their quality ain't up to snuff with Warframe. The mods just don't feel like they have a very meaningful impact on your weapons or on your Descendant. Sure, I could probably notice that my character got low a little less often, but honestly the mods never had enough impact to where I felt I'd actually die without them. It feels really weird to me to put in this complex system which borrows so much from Warframe's greatness, but also decrease its impact to the point that the player just picks random ones that sound good. In Warframe, there's a whole fucking culture around what builds work with what weapons, Warframes, etc. Different weapons have different strengths, and because of the complex mod system they're built on, they all feel unique and have tons of different ways to mod them. There's just a lot more to play with in Warframe compared to the First Descendant. A lot more possibilities, which made the systems put into the First Descendant feel kinda useless and cheap to me, even though they share some complexity with the better systems of Warframe. I also found myself a lot more immersed into the story of Warframe compared to the First Descendant. Now, from what I know, the story really isn't that important here, and honestly, the story in Warframe isn't that great either. But it's clear that there were at the very least some ideas about how to direct this game, but it never feels anywhere near as compelling as Warframe does. I just really couldn't force myself to be interested in this game's story. I'm not really sure why. I just think that the writing isn't all that interesting. I've also mentioned this already, but almost all the characters are really in that uncanny valley where it starts to feel really unnatural. The characters are either so uninteresting or so cliched that you'd think they were written by modern Hollywood. I think the biggest offender of this is Jeremy, someone who appears a bit later, who is the embodiment of that one guy in your presentation group who refuses to do his slides.
It seems as if all of you have forgotten, so I'll repeat myself one more time, since they're here too. It looks like it'll be a guide-related mission from this point on, which means I can't have anything to do with it, right?
Now, I get the point of this character is probably to be stereotypical, but it still feels a little ridiculous. Bunny is also the pretty stereotypical happy-go-lucky girl, but honestly, the other characters are so bland that she seems refreshing in comparison. The characters in Warframe don't have much development either, other than maybe the Lotus, but they all play their parts so much more believably than those in the First Descendant. And similarly to the characters, quests are a lot more compelling and, most importantly, fucking interesting in Warframe. You're given a lot more information about the world of Warframe in those quests, whereas the quests I've completed in the First Descendant were really more about getting new shit, which is fine, I guess, but it just makes them all the more forgettable. I'd also like to touch on the soundtrack. Warframe's soundtrack is some of the best I've ever heard in gaming, so I didn't expect the First Descendant to compete, but even so, I think the music could have a little more presence in this game. It honestly feels like there's only jingles. I mean, hell, Warframe has tracks like Sleeping in the Cold Below, For Armor, and We All Live Together. Absolute bangers, but the only time I ever noticed the music was this little fucking guitar riff, which was really cool, but it never lasted long enough for me to enjoy it. I think I've complained about this game enough, though, and honestly, for the amount that I dogged on this game, I don't actually think it's bad. It's definitely one of the more forgettable games I've ever played, but I've definitely had worse experiences elsewhere. It's certainly not going to replace Warframe in the roster of games I'd be willing to spend over 500 hours in, but I do think this has a place in the market. It's another one of those games you can spend hundreds of hours on and still have content to get through, and that's great for people who want that. I don't want to shit on people who actually like this game, because even though it's not for me, this game has a lot of players. I mean, fucking A, it has over 80,000 reviews on Steam, which, according to Google, translates to a fuck ton of players. And clearly people are willing to spend their hard-earned money on this game. The amount of people I saw with paid-only skins was fucking ridiculous. And honestly, for a game that was described to me as Warframe with titties, this game ain't fucking far off. It'll be interesting to see how this game changes, and I wonder how this will compete with Warframe 1999, which comes out somewhere in December, and I imagine will be pretty similar to the First Descendant gameplay-wise. What do you guys think? Is this game infinitely better than Warframe, or a steaming pile of dog shit that ain't even worth the free price? I know my answer, but regardless, I'm gonna go ask Guide Mommy if she'll step on me. See you later.